Hello and welcome back to Better Know a Poet. Today, G is for Gray. We are looking at the poet Thomas Gray. Thomas Gray is a very interesting figure. He really is known for only one poem, but that poem is one of the greatest poems in the English language. So this is Thomas Gray. Thomas Gray was an 18th century poet. He was born in 1716 in London and died in 1771 in Cambridge. He was an English poet whose Elegy, written in a country churchyard, is one of the best known of English lyric poems. Although his literary output was slight, he was the dominant poetic figure in the mid 18th century and a precursor of the Romantic movement. Born into a prosperous but unhappy home, Gray was the sole survivor of 12 children, a harsh and violent father, and a long suffering mother, who operated a millinery business to help educate him. A delicate and studious boy, he was sent to Eton in 1725 at the age of 8. There he formed a quadruple alliance with three other boys who liked poetry and classics and disliked rowdy sports and the Hogarthian manners of the period. They were Horace Walpole, the son of the Prime Minister, the precocious Richard West, who was closest to Gray, and Thomas Ashton. The style of life Gray developed at Eton, devoted to quiet study, the pleasures of the imagination, and a few understanding friends, was to persist for the rest of his years. In 1734, he entered Peterhouse, Cambridge, where he began to write Latin verse of considerable merit. He left in 1738 without a degree and set out in 1739 with Walpole on a grand tour of France, Switzerland, and Italy at Sir Robert Walpole's expense. At first, all went well, but in 1741 they quarreled, possibly over Gray's preferences for museums and scenery to Walpole's interest in lighter social pursuits, and Gray returned to England. They were reconciled in 1745 on Walpole's initiative and remained somewhat cooler friends for the rest of their lives. In 1742, Gray settled at Cambridge. That same year, West died, an event that affected him profoundly. Gray had begun to write English poems, among which some of the best were Ode on the Spring, Sonnet on the Death of Mr. Richard West, Hymn to Adversity, and Ode on a Distant Prospect of Eton College. They revealed his maturity, ease, and felicity of expression, wistful melancholy, and the ability to phrase truisms in striking, quotable lines such as, "Where ignorance is bliss," and "'Tis folly to be wise." The Eton Ode was published in 1747 and again in 1748, along with Ode on the Spring. They attracted no attention. It was not until an elegy written in a country churchyard, a poem long in the making, was published in 1751 that Gray was recognized. Its success was instantaneous and overwhelming. A dignified elegy, in eloquent classical diction celebrating the graves of humble and unknown villagers, was in itself a novelty. Its theme, that the lives of the rich and poor alike lead but to the grave, was already familiar, but Gray's treatment, which had the effect of suggesting that it was not only the rude forefathers of the village he was mourning, but the death of all men and of the poet himself, gave the poem its universal appeal. Gray's newfound celebrity did not make the slightest difference in his habits. He remained at Peterhouse until 1756, when, outraged by a prank played on him by students, he moved to Pembroke College. He wrote two Pindaric odes, The Progress of Poesy and The Bard, published in 1757 by Walpole's private Strawberry Hill Press. They were criticized, not without reason, for obscurity, and in disappointment, Gray virtually ceased to write. He was offered the laureateship in 1757, but declined it. He buried himself in his studies of Celtic and Scandinavian antiquities and became increasingly retiring and hypochondriacal. In his last years, his peace was disrupted by his friendship with a young Swiss nobleman, Charles Victor de Bonstetten, for whom he conceived a romantic devotion, the most profound emotional experience of his life. Gray died at 55 and was buried in the Country Churchyard at Stoke Poges, Buckinghamshire, celebrated in his Elegy. And that's the biography from Encyclopedia Britannica. Again, Gray is really only known for one poem, and that is his Elegy written in a country churchyard. It's a little longer, but it is, like I said, one of the greatest poems in English. So it's well worth reading the whole thing. The curfew tolls the knell of parting day. The lowing herd winds slowly o'er the lea. The ploughman homeward plods his weary way, and leaves the world to darkness and to me. Now fades the glimmering landscape on the sight, and all the air a solemn stillness holds, save where the beetle wheels his droning flight, and drowsy tinklings lull the distant folds. Save that from yonder ivy-mantled tower, the moping owl does to the moon complain of such as wandering near her secret bower molest her ancient solitary reign. Beneath those rugged elms that yew trees shade, where heaves the turf in many a mouldering heap, each in his narrow cell forever laid, the rude forefathers of the hamlet sleep. The breezy call of incense-breathing morn, the swallow twittering from the straw-built shed, the cock's shrill clarion, or the echoing horn, no more shall rouse them from their lowly bed. For them no more the blazing hearth shall burn, or busy housewife ply her evening care. No children run to lisp their sire's return, or climb his knees the envied kiss to share. Oft did the harvest to their sickle yield, their furrow oft the stubborn glebe has broke. How jocund did they drive their team afield, how bowed the woods beneath their sturdy stroke. Let not ambition mock their useful toil, their homely joys and destiny obscure, nor grandeur hear with a disdainful smile the short and simple annals of the poor. The boast of heraldry, the pomp of power, and all that beauty, all that wealth e'er gave, awaits alike the inevitable hour. The paths of glory lead but to the grave. Nor you, ye proud, impute to these the fault, if memory o'er their tomb no trophies raise, where through the long-drawn aisle and fretted vault the pealing anthem swells the note of praise. Can storied urn or animated bust back to its mansion call the fleeting breath? Can honor's voice provoke the silent dust, or flattery soothe the dull, cold ear of death? Perhaps in this neglected spot is laid some heart once pregnant with celestial fire, hands that the rod of empire might have swayed, or waked to ecstasy the living lyre. But knowledge to their eyes her ample page, rich with the spoils of time, did ne'er unroll. Chill penury repressed their noble rage, and froze the genial current of the soul. Full many a gem of purest ray serene, the dark unfathomed caves of ocean bear. Full many a flower is born to blush unseen, and waste its sweetness on the desert air. Some village Hampton that with dauntless breast the little tyrant of his field withstood, some mute inglorious Milton here may rest, some Cromwell guiltless of his country's blood. The applause of listening senates to command, the threats of pain and ruin to despise, to scatter plenty o'er a smiling land, and read their history in a nation's eyes. Their lot forbade, nor circumscribed alone, their growing virtues, but their crimes confined, forbade to wade through slaughter to a throne, and shut the gates of mercy on mankind. The struggling pains of conscious truth to hide, to quench the blushes of ingenious shame, or heap the shrine of luxury and pride with incense kindled at the muses' flame. Far from the madding crowd's ignoble strife, Their sober wishes never learned to stray along the cool sequestered vale of life. They kept the noiseless tenor of their way. Yet even these bones from insult to protect, some frail memorial still erected high, with uncouth rhymes and shapeless sculpture decked, implores the passing tribute of a sigh. Their name, their years, spelt by the unlettered muse, the place of fame and elegy supply, and many a holy text around she strews, that teach the rustic moralist to die. For who to dumb forgetfulness a prey, this pleasing anxious being ere resigned, left the warm precincts of the cheerful day, nor cast one lingering look behind. On some fond breast the parting soul relies, some pious drops the closing eye requires. Even from the tomb the voice of nature cries, even in our ashes lives their wonted fires. For thee, who mindful of the unhonored dead, dost in these lines their artless tale relate, if chance, by lonely contemplation led, some kindred spirit shall inquire thy fate. Haply some hoary-headed swain may say, oft have we seen him at the peep of dawn, brushing with hasty steps the dews away, to meet the spun upon the upland lawn. There at the foot of yonder nodding beech, that wreathes its old fantastic roots so high, his listless length at noontide would he stretch, and pore upon the brook that babbles by. Hard by yon wood, now smiling as in scorn, muttering his wayward fancies, he would rove, now drooping, woeful wan, like one forlorn, or crazed with care, or crossed in hopeless love. One morn I missed him on the customed hill, along the heath, and near his favourite tree. Another came, nor yet beside the rill, nor up the lawn, nor at the wood was he. The next, with dirges due in sad array, slow through the churchway path we saw him borne, approached the reed, for thou canst read the lay, graved on the stone beneath yon aged thorn, the epitaph. Here rests his head upon the lap of earth, a youth to fortune and to fame unknown. Fair science frowned not on his humble birth, and melancholy marked him for her own. Large was his bounty, and his soul sincere. Heaven did a recompense as largely send. He gave to misery all he had, a tear. He gained from heaven, 'twas all he wished, a friend. No farther seek his merits to disclose, nor draw his frailties from their dread abode. There they alike in trembling hope repose, the bosom of his Father and his God. See you tomorrow.